The huge alien ships came out of nowhere. One moment, the space around Earth's moon was empty and quiet. The next moment, it was full of metal monsters that blocked out the stars. Admiral Zexthara stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. He had done this 47 times before. Always the same pattern. Show up with overwhelming force. Watch the primitive aliens panic. Accept their surrender. Add another world to the Galactic Confederation. His ships were beautiful and terrible. Each one was the size of a small city. Their hulls were made of metal that could bend light around itself. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Their shields could stop anything these backward humans might throw at them. "Sir, we are in position," his tactical officer reported. "All weapons charged, all shields at maximum power." Zexthara nodded. "Open a channel to the human homeworld. Standard conquest protocol." The communication officer's fingers danced over his controls. "Channel open, sir." "Primitive species of the third planet," Zexthara began, using the same words he had spoken 47 times before. "You are now under the authority of the Galactic Confederation. Prepare for immediate surrender or face the consequences of resistance." He cut the transmission and waited. Usually, this was when the screaming started, or the begging. Sometimes they tried to launch their pathetic weapons. Once, a species had tried to hide their entire population underground. But the humans did something different. The response came back in less than 10 minutes. A cheerful voice spoke in clear galactic standard. "Well, hello there! Welcome to our solar system! We're so excited to meet you." Zexthara blinked. His officers looked at each other with confusion. The voice continued. "We've prepared docking space for your ships at Luna Station. That's our big space station near the moon. We figured you might want to stretch your legs after such a long journey. We've also got fresh coffee brewing and some really nice Earth cookies waiting for you." The communication officer stared at his instruments. "Sir, they're transmitting detailed docking procedures and what appears to be parking instructions. They're also sending atmospheric compatibility data," another officer added, "and asking if any of our crew have food allergies." Zexthara felt something he had never experienced in 47 conquests. Confusion. A second transmission arrived. This time it included images, technical drawings of docking ports, maps of their space station, a welcome schedule that included something called orientation tours and cultural exchange meetings. At the bottom of the message was a small yellow circle with 2 dots and a curved line. According to his translation systems, humans called it a smiley face. "Sir," his science officer said slowly, "I think they're inviting us to visit." "That's impossible," Zexthara snapped. "Run full sensor sweeps. Check for hidden weapons. Military installations. Defense fleets." The sensors worked for an hour. When they finished, the science officer looked even more confused. "Sir, they have some basic orbital defenses, a few small military stations, but nothing that could threaten our fleet." "Then why aren't they surrendering?" "Sir, I don't think they understand that we're here to conquer them." A third transmission arrived. This one was a video message. A human female in a blue uniform appeared on the screen. She had short, dark hair and was holding a steaming cup of something. "Greetings, Admiral," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We're really looking forward to meeting you in person. We've prepared quarters for your delegation aboard Luna Station. The environmental controls are set to match your species' preferences." She took a sip from her cup. "We've also compiled some information about Earth and human culture that we thought you might find interesting. Nothing classified, of course, just the kind of stuff we like to share with new friends." The transmission showed images of Earth, beautiful blue oceans, green forests, cities full of lights, art galleries, concert halls, children playing in parks. "We know first contact can be a bit overwhelming," Chen continued. "So we've put together a whole team of experts to help make this as smooth as possible. Linguists, cultural specialists, even some really good cooks. She smiled again. Just let us know when you're ready to come aboard. We'll have the welcome mat out. The transmission ended. Zexathara stared at the blank screen for a full minute. In 47 previous conquests, he had never received a welcome mat. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zexathara thought about it. Every species reacted to overwhelming force in predictable ways. Fear, panic, desperate aggression, immediate surrender. But humans were doing something else. They were acting like his massive war fleet was a group of tourists who had gotten lost. "Analysis," he ordered. His intelligence officer pulled up files on human behavior. "Species shows high levels of social cooperation, strong tribal loyalty, history of violent conflict, but also strong diplomatic traditions. They appear to value something they call hospitality." "Are they insane?" "Unknown, sir, but their technology is more advanced than initial scans suggested. Their space station is much larger than it appeared, and they've been tracking our movements since we entered their system." That got Zexathara's attention. "What do you mean?" "They knew we were coming, sir. They had time to prepare. This welcome isn't spontaneous. It's planned." A fourth transmission arrived. This time it was just audio. A different human voice, older and male. "Admiral Zexathara, this is Dr. James Wright, Earth's Chief of Xenological Studies. We've been studying your fleet's configuration, and we're quite impressed. Your shield harmonics are particularly elegant. We'd love to discuss the engineering principles with your technical staff." The voice paused. "We've also prepared some gifts from Earth. Nothing valuable, just some items that represent human culture. We thought you might enjoy them." The transmission included a list: music recordings, art pieces, something called chocolate, books of poetry, mathematical proofs, scientific discoveries. "We're not trying to buy anything," Wright's voice continued. "We just like to share. It's what humans do when we meet new people." Zexathara realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans weren't acting afraid because they weren't afraid. They had invited a massive alien war fleet to dinner, and somehow, impossibly, that invitation felt genuine. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving another transmission. It's from their leader." "Put it through." A new human appeared on screen, older, with gray hair and wearing formal clothes. "Admiral, I'm Secretary General Maria Santos of the United Nations. On behalf of all humanity, I want to formally welcome you to our solar system." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "We understand you represent a larger galactic community. We're honored that you'd consider making contact with us. We hope this can be the beginning of a long and productive relationship." The transmission ended with another one of those impossible human smiles. Zexathara sat in his command chair, staring at the planet below. 47 times he had done this. 47 times it had been simple. Show force, accept surrender, move on. But the humans had somehow turned his conquest into a diplomatic reception. "Sir," his first officer said carefully, "perhaps we should accept their invitation, if only to assess their capabilities." Zexathara nodded slowly. He was beginning to suspect that humanity's capabilities were not what they appeared to be. And for the first time in his military career, he was curious to find out what he was really dealing with. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, holding her morning coffee and watching the alien fleet hold their position exactly where Earth had suggested they park. The ships were impressive, she had to admit. Massive. Powerful. Designed to make anyone who saw them feel very small and very afraid. Too bad humans had never been very good at feeling small. "Classic intimidation formation," said Dr. James Wright, walking up beside her with his own coffee. "The Elderly xenopsychologist adjusted his glasses as he studied the alien ships. Textbook stuff, really? Designed to inspire awe and terror. Probably works great on most species. Chen nodded, taking another sip of her coffee. Good thing we're not most species. Behind them, Luna Station hummed with activity. 3,000 people worked around the clock, preparing for what everyone knew would be the most important meeting in human history. But there was no panic, no fear, just focused, determined work. Because humanity had learned something important during their long and violent history. Sometimes the best way to win a fight was to refuse to have one. Status report, Chen said, into her communicator. Kitchen staff reports all meals prepared according to alien dietary requirements, came the reply. Cultural teams have finished the welcome presentations. Security teams are in position but keeping a low profile. Translation software is running perfectly. And the gifts? Ready for presentation, Commander. The chocolate alone took 6 hours to get right. Apparently their species can process cocoa, but it affects them differently than it affects us. Chen smiled. That was humanity in a nutshell. Give them 12 hours to prepare for alien contact, and they'd spend half that time making sure the chocolate was perfect. Ma'am, another voice came through her communicator. We're receiving another transmission from the alien fleet. Put it through. The alien admiral's voice filled the observation deck. It sounded less confident than before. Human Commander Chen, we accept your invitation. A small delegation will dock with your station in 2 hours. Wonderful, Chen replied immediately. We'll have the welcome committee ready. Will you need any special accommodations? Environmental suits? Dietary restrictions? We want to make sure you're comfortable. There was a long pause. You understand that we are here to discuss your surrender? Chen exchanged a look with Dr. Wright. The old man was grinning. Of course, Admiral. We understand you have things you want to discuss. That's what meetings are for. We'll have everything ready for you. She cut the transmission and turned to Wright. How do you think they're handling this? Badly, Wright chuckled. They've been using the same playbook for decades, probably centuries. Show up with big guns, demand surrender, accept submission. They have no idea what to do when someone treats them like guests instead of conquerors. Think it'll work? It's already working. They agreed to meet with us instead of just blasting the planet. That's step one. Chen walked over to the window and looked down at Earth. The blue and green planet spun slowly below them, peaceful and beautiful. Somewhere down there, 7 billion humans were going about their daily lives, working, learning, loving, building things, creating art, raising children. They had no idea that their entire future might depend on the next few hours. But Chen knew, and so did everyone else on Luna Station. They knew that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their ability to make anyone feel welcome, even alien conquerors. You know what the hardest part of this is going to be? She asked Wright. What's that? Not laughing when they try to threaten us while eating our cookies. 2 hours later, Chen stood in the docking bay as the alien shuttle approached. It was sleek and dangerous looking, just like everything else in their fleet. But it was also following human docking procedures perfectly, which meant they were at least willing to play by Earth's rules. The shuttle landed with barely a sound. Advanced technology, Chen noted. Their engines were incredibly quiet. The airlock opened, and Admiral Zexthara stepped out. Chen had seen the alien leader's image in their transmissions, but seeing him in person was different. He was tall, almost 7 feet, with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. His uniform was covered in what were probably military decorations. His eyes were large and dark, and they were scanning everything around him like he expected an attack. Behind him came 6 guards. They were even bigger than the Admiral, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. Their body language screamed danger and aggression. Chen stepped forward with a bright smile and a small bouquet of flowers from Earth. Admiral Zex Thara, welcome to Luna Station. I'm Commander Chen. I hope your flight over was pleasant. She held out the flowers. These are from Earth's oldest botanical garden. We thought you might enjoy something unique to our world. The Admiral stared at the flowers like they might explode. His guards tensed, hands moving toward their weapons. They're just flowers, Chen said gently. A human custom. We give them to honor guests. Slowly, carefully, the Admiral took the bouquet. His translator worked for a moment, then he said, "Thank you. They are beautiful. Excellent. Now, if you'll follow me, we'll get you settled in. I thought we'd start with a quick tour of the station, then move to the conference room for our discussion." She turned and began walking, chatting casually, as she led them through Luna Station's corridors. This section houses our research laboratories. We've been studying your ship designs. Brilliant engineering, by the way. The way you bend light around your hulls is fascinating. They passed through galleries filled with human art, paintings and sculptures from every culture on Earth. Music played softly from hidden speakers. Classical, jazz, rock, traditional folk songs from dozens of countries. This is our cultural center, Chen explained. We believe art helps people understand each other. No matter where you're from, good music is good music, you know. The aliens said nothing, but Chen noticed they were looking at everything, taking it all in. They walked past a section dedicated to human achievements, the first heart transplant, the eradication of polio, the first steps on the moon, a child's drawing labeled "My Family" in crayon. We're proud of what we've built, Chen said simply. Not what we've conquered, what we've created. One of the alien guards said something in their language. The Admiral replied sharply. He says these are conquest displays, Chen said calmly, proving that human translation technology was better than the aliens had expected. But they're not. We're not showing you what we've beaten. We're showing you what we've made. She stopped in front of a display showing the construction of Luna Station itself. Thousands of humans working together in space, building something, beautiful and functional and peaceful. There's a difference, she said. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What difference?" Chen smiled. When you conquer something, you destroy it and take what's left. When you build something, you create something new that didn't exist before. One makes the universe smaller, the other makes it bigger. They reached the conference room. It was large and comfortable, with a table set for dinner rather than negotiations. Real food, prepared by human hands, with place settings that somehow perfectly matched each alien's physiological needs. "Now then," Chen said, settling into her chair as servers brought out the first course. "What can Earth do for you today?" The Admiral sat down slowly. Chen could see him trying to regain control of the situation, trying to remember that he was supposed to be the conqueror here. But it was hard to feel like a conqueror when someone was serving you soup and asking about your day. "We are here to discuss your surrender," he said firmly. "Of course," Chen agreed easily. "That's one option. We're happy to discuss all the possibilities. But first, tell us about your confederation. What's it like? What do your member species contribute? How does it all work?" And just like that, Chen had done it again. Instead of answering demands, she was asking questions. Instead of defending, she was interviewing. The Admiral found himself talking about trade routes and technological sharing and cultural programs. And somehow, without quite knowing how, he realized he was trying to make the Galactic Confederation sound attractive to these humans. As if they had a choice in the matter. As if Earth was interviewing them for membership instead of begging for mercy. Admiral Zexathara had conquered 47 worlds. Each time, the pattern was exactly the same. He would arrive with overwhelming force. The local species would either fight uselessly or surrender immediately. Within hours, he would be accepting. their submission and adding another planet to the Galactic Confederation. But 3 hours into his meeting with the humans, he realized that something had gone terribly wrong. He was supposed to be accepting their surrender. Instead, he was eating soup and explaining why they should want to join the Confederation voluntarily. "So your member species contribute different things?" Commander Chen asked, cutting into what his scanners confirmed was genuine Earth-grown food. "That's interesting. What sort of contributions?" "Resources," Zexathera said automatically. "Technology, labor, military service when required. And in return? Protection, access to galactic trade routes, technology sharing." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like a practical arrangement. What about cultural exchange, scientific? Collaboration? Are your member species happy with the setup?" Zexathera paused. In 47 conquests, no one had ever asked if his member species were happy. "Satisfaction is not typically measured," he admitted. "Ah," Chen said. She didn't sound judgmental, just curious. "More of a top-down management style. We've tried that approach ourselves. Had mixed results." Dr. Wright leaned forward. "We're particularly interested in your conflict resolution protocols. How do you handle disputes between member species?" "Disputes are discouraged," Zexathera replied carefully. "Discouraged how?" "Economic sanctions, military intervention if necessary." Wright made a note on his tablet. "Direct enforcement model. Very traditional. How often do you need to use military intervention?" "More frequently in recent years," Zexathera found himself admitting. "Some species have become resistant to Confederation authority." "That's tough," Chen said sympathetically. "We found that resistance usually means people feel like they don't have a voice in the process. Have you tried any collaborative approaches?" Zexathera stared at her. "Collaborative approaches?" "You know, letting member species participate in decision-making, democratic councils, consensus building, that sort of thing." "The Confederation Council makes all decisions," Zexathera said. "And who's on the council?" "The founding species. The oldest members." Chen and Wright exchanged a look. "So, newer members don't get representation?" "They earn representation through service and loyalty." "How long does that usually take?" Zexathera thought about it. "The most recent species to gain council representation did so after 400 years of membership." Wright whistled softly. 4 centuries. That's a long probation period." "It ensures stability," Zexathera said defensively. "I'm sure it does," Chen agreed. "Stability is important. So is feeling valued and heard. We've found that people work better when they feel like they're part of the team rather than just following orders." She took a sip of her drink. "Tell me about your trade routes. Are they open to all members equally?" For the next hour, Chen and Wright asked questions that Zexathera had never considered. About member satisfaction, about economic equality, about cultural preservation, about what species gained versus what they gave up. And slowly, uncomfortably, Zexathera began to realize that the Galactic Confederation might not sound as attractive to outsiders as he had always assumed. "This is all very interesting," Chen said finally. "But I think we should talk about what Earth might bring to the table." "You are not in a position to negotiate," Zexathera said, trying to regain control of the conversation. "You will surrender and accept Confederation membership on our terms." Chen smiled, that impossible friendly smile that made his threat assessment systems malfunction. "Of course, Admiral, if that's what you decide. But since we're here talking, why not explore all the options? You never know what might work out best for everyone." She gestured to one of her staff, who brought out a large display screen. "Let me show you what humanity has been up to lately." The screen lit up with images from Earth, cities that gleamed with clean energy, hospitals where diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries had been eliminated, schools where children from dozens of different cultures learned together. We're pretty good at solving problems, Chen said casually. Take this, for example. The screen showed a massive engineering project. Humans working in space, building something enormous and complex. Our latest deep space exploration platform. Self-sustaining, highly mobile, capable of supporting a crew of 10,000 for decades without resupply. Zexthara leaned forward. His technical training kicked in automatically. Those power systems, how do you achieve that efficiency? Oh, we'd be happy to share the details if you're interested. We've got some pretty innovative approaches to energy generation, fusion, antimatter, even some theoretical work on zero-point extraction. The screen changed to show medical facilities, and this is our latest work in biological sciences. We've figured out how to regenerate lost limbs, cure most cancers, and extend healthy lifespan by about 300 years. Wright spoke up. We're also pretty good at psychological sciences. Conflict resolution, cultural integration, social harmony. We've learned a lot from our own history. Your own history? Zexthara asked. We used to fight each other constantly, Chen explained. Wars, genocide, slavery, you name it. But we figured out how to stop, how to work together, instead of tearing each other apart. The screen showed more images. Humans of different colors and cultures working side by side, former enemies shaking hands, children playing together regardless of their backgrounds. Took us a while to get it right, Wright added, but we're pretty proud of where we ended up. Zexthara stared at the display. His intelligence reports had mentioned human history, the violence, the conflicts, the seemingly endless warfare. But they had also noted that all major conflicts had ended over a century ago. He had assumed it was because they had run out of things to fight about. Now he was beginning to think they had learned something instead. What are you suggesting? He asked carefully. Nothing specific, Chen said. Just that if you're interested in having Earth join the Confederation, we might be able to contribute more than just resources and labor. Such as problem-solving expertise, diplomatic experience, scientific innovation, cultural integration techniques. She paused. And military service if needed, but we prefer to think of it as peacekeeping. Wright pulled out another tablet. We've been analyzing your recent conflicts with resistant member species. We might have some ideas for resolving those situations without military intervention. That's impossible, Zexthara said automatically. Some species refuse to cooperate. Force is the only option. Is it? Chen asked. Have you tried asking them what they actually want? What their concerns are? What would make them feel valued? Instead of conquered? Zexthara opened his mouth to explain why that was impossible, then closed it again. In 47 conquests, he had never asked a species what they wanted. You're saying you could resolve our conflicts without military action? We're saying we'd like to try, Wright replied. We've gotten pretty good at turning enemies into allies. It's what humans do. Chen smiled again. Plus, we make excellent coffee and chocolate. That's got to count for something. Despite himself, Zexthara found his mouth twitching, almost as if he wanted to smile back. And if we're not interested in your contributions? Chen's expression didn't change, still friendly, still confident. Then I guess you'll conquer us the old-fashioned way. But Admiral, with respect, you've conquered 47 worlds using force. How's that working out for you? Zexthara thought about the increasing rebellions, the resource drains, the constant need for military enforcement, the growing resentment among Confederation members. Not as well as it used to, he admitted. Maybe it's time to try something different, Chen suggested gently. What's the worst that could happen? If our approach doesn't work, you can always go back to conquering people. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Zexthara found himself seriously considering whether there might be a better way to run a galactic empire, and the humans were offering to show him how. 6 hours after the meeting began, Admiral Zexthara sat in Luna Station's guest quarters, staring at a datapad full of human proposals and trying to figure out how he had lost control of his own conquest. He had come here to accept Earth's surrender. Instead, he was reading detailed plans for improving Confederation efficiency, member satisfaction surveys, and something called collaborative governance models. The humans had turned his conquest into a job interview, and somehow, they were the ones doing the interviewing. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. "Come in," he said. Commander Chen entered, carrying a tray with 2 cups of the human beverage called coffee and a plate of small brown squares that his scanner identified as chocolate. "I thought you might like a break," she said, setting the tray down on a small table. "How are you finding the quarters?" Zexathara looked around the room. It was comfortable, spacious, and decorated with art from dozens of human cultures. The environmental controls had been perfectly adjusted for his species' needs. There was even a small garden visible through the window, with plants that somehow reminded him of his homeworld. "It's adequate," he said. Chen smiled and sat down across from him. "I wanted to apologize if we've overwhelmed you with information. We tend to get excited when we meet new people." "This is not how conquests typically proceed," Zexathara said carefully. "I imagine not. We're probably not reacting the way most species do." "Why?" Chen was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "Because we learned something important during our history. When someone shows up with overwhelming force, you have 3 choices. You can fight and probably lose. You can surrender and definitely lose. Or you can change the game entirely." Change the game? Make it about cooperation instead of conquest, partnership instead of domination. Find out what they really want, and see if you can give it to them in a way that benefits everyone. She took a sip of her coffee. "Admiral, can I ask you something? Do you enjoy conquering planets?" The question caught him off guard. "Enjoy? Do you wake up in the morning excited about forcing another species into submission? Does it make you happy to see people surrender out of fear?" Zexathara thought about it. In the early days, there had been satisfaction in adding new worlds to the Confederation, a sense of accomplishment. But lately, it has become more difficult. He admitted. Species resist more than they used to. They seem less grateful for Confederation protection. Maybe because they don't feel protected. Maybe they feel threatened. The Confederation provides security, technology, trade opportunities. At the cost of freedom, Chen said gently. At the cost of having any say in their own future. She leaned forward. "Admiral, what if I told you there was a way to get everything the Confederation wants? Resources, cooperation, loyalty, military support, without having to conquer anyone?" "I would say you are naive." "Maybe, or maybe I'm right." She gestured toward the window, where Earth hung in space below them. "Look at that planet, Admiral. 7 billion humans, hundreds of different cultures, dozens of different governments. For most of our history, we spent our time fighting each other over resources, territory, ideology. But you no longer fight. Not with each other, no. We learned that cooperation gets you further than conquest. That diversity makes you stronger, not weaker. That when people feel valued and heard, they work harder and complain less." Chen pulled out her tablet and showed him a chart. Human productivity increased by 400% after we established global democratic governance. Innovation rates went up by 600%. Social satisfaction increased dramatically. And military effectiveness actually went up too. People fight harder when they're defending something they chose to be part of rather than something they were forced into. Zexathara studied the data. The numbers were impressive, but this is one species on one world. The Confederation spans dozens of species across hundreds of worlds. Which is exactly why it should work even better, Wright said, entering the room with his own cup of coffee. More diversity, more perspectives, more potential for innovation. Dr. Wright, Chen said. Perfect timing. The Admiral was asking about scaling up cooperative governance. Wright sat down and pulled out his own tablet. We've actually been modeling this, based on what you've told us about Confederation structure and your current challenges. The tablet screen showed a complex organizational chart. Here's what we think might work. Democratic representation scaled by population and contribution. Rotating leadership roles. Consensus-building protocols for major decisions. Economic. Profit sharing based on participation rather than seniority. It would never work, Zexathera said automatically. Too complicated, too many variables, too much opportunity for conflict. Maybe, Wright admitted. But what you're doing now isn't working either. You said yourself that resistance is increasing. Chen leaned back in her chair. Admiral, can I tell you about the Eurasian War? I am not familiar with it. It was the last major conflict in human history. Two massive alliances, each convinced the other was a threat. Millions of people died. Entire cities were destroyed. It went on for 12 years. She showed him images on her tablet. Devastated landscapes, refugee camps, mass graves. Both sides were convinced that the only way to achieve security was to defeat their enemies completely, to force them into submission. How did it end? Someone finally asked a different question. Instead of, how do we win? They asked, what does everyone actually need? And it turned out that both sides wanted basically the same things. Security, prosperity, freedom to live their lives in peace. Wright nodded. Once we figured that out, the solution was obvious. Instead of fighting over resources, we learned to share them. Instead of competing for territory, we learned to cooperate across borders. Instead of trying to eliminate differences, we learned to celebrate them. And now? Now human civilization is stronger, more innovative, and more prosperous than ever before. Not because we conquered our enemies, but because we turned them into allies. Zexthera looked at the data again. The human model was impressive, but the Confederation has maintained order for over 3,000 years. Why change now? Because maintaining order isn't the same as creating prosperity, Chen said. Because preventing rebellion isn't the same as inspiring loyalty. Because conquest might give you control, but cooperation gives you commitment. She stood up and walked to the window. Admiral, what if your member species weren't just following orders? What if they were enthusiastic partners? What if instead of having to constantly watch for rebellion, you had dozens of worlds actively working to make the Confederation better? That is an impossible fantasy. Is it? Or is it just a different approach? Wright pulled up another screen. We've been analyzing your recent conflicts. The Andraxian resistance, the Valonian independence movement, the Karathi trade disputes. How do you know about those? You mentioned them earlier. But here's the thing. We've seen conflicts like these before, in human history, and we've learned how to resolve them. The screen showed detailed analysis of each conflict, root causes, underlying motivations, potential solutions. The Andraxians aren't really fighting for independence, Wright explained. They're fighting for representation. They want a voice in decisions that affect their world. The Valonians aren't rebelling against the Confederation, Chen added. They're rebelling against economic policies that benefit older members at their expense. And the Karathi aren't trying to break trade agreements. They're trying to get fair treatment in trade negotiations. Zexathara stared at the analysis. It was disturbingly accurate. You think you could resolve these conflicts? We think we could help you resolve them, Chen corrected, by addressing the underlying causes instead of just suppressing the symptoms. And in return, partnership, real partnership, not conquest disguised as cooperation. Wright leaned forward. Admiral, what if Earth didn't join the Confederation as a conquered world? What if we joined as equals, as consultants, as problem solvers? The Council would never accept such an arrangement. Maybe not, Chen agreed. But what if we could show them that it works better than the alternative? She pulled up one final screen. It showed projections for Confederation efficiency under different governance models. Current system, declining satisfaction, increasing resistance, rising military costs, decreasing innovation, she read. Collaborative model, increased participation, reduced conflict, lower enforcement costs, accelerated technological development. The numbers were compelling, almost too good to be true. This is all theoretical, Zexathara said. So was everything else, until someone tried it, Chen replied. Admiral, you've conquered 47 worlds using force. But what if the 48th world showed you a better way? Zexathara looked out at Earth again. A small blue planet full of creatures who had somehow turned his conquest into a partnership negotiation. For the first time in his military career, he found himself wondering if there really might be a better way to run a galactic civilization, and if these impossible humans might actually be able to show him how. 48 hours after first contact, Admiral Zexathara sat in his flagship's command center, staring at a document that would either revolutionize galactic civilization or end his military career. The humans had done something impossible. They had turned their own conquest into a membership application. Sir, his legal officer said nervously, I've reviewed the agreement 17 times. It's completely unprecedented, but it's also legally binding under Confederation law. Zexathara read through the document again. Earth was requesting immediate membership in the Galactic Confederation, not as a conquered world, but as a full partner with voting rights, technological sharing privileges, and representation on the Council. In return, humanity offered something no conquered species had ever provided: voluntary military service, expertise in conflict resolution, and access to what they called human innovation protocols. This is insane, his tactical officer muttered. We came here to conquer them. Now we're considering making them our equals? Not our equals, Zexathara said slowly. Our partners. The difference was important. In 47 previous conquests, he had created subjects, people who followed orders because they had no choice. But the humans were offering to become allies, people who would work with the Confederation because they wanted to. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving another transmission from Earth. Put it through. Commander Chen appeared on the main screen, still wearing that impossible smile. But now Zexathara was beginning to understand what that smile really meant. It wasn't the expression of someone who was afraid or trying to please their conquerors. It was the expression of someone who was confident in their own value. Admiral, Chen said cheerfully, I wanted to thank you personally for considering our application. Our engineers have been reviewing your fleet specifications, and we've identified several areas where we might be able to help with efficiency improvements. She held up a data pad. Nothing major, just some tweaks to your shield harmonics and power distribution systems. We estimate you could increase overall fleet effectiveness by about 15% with minimal modifications. Zexathara's engineering staff were already pulling up the human proposals. Their eyes widened as they read. These modifications, his chief engineer whispered. They're brilliant, simple but brilliant. Chen continued. We're also sending up a care package for your crew. Some Earth chocolate, music from various human cultures, and a few other items we thought they might enjoy. Think of it as a welcome gift from your newest potential allies. The transmission ended, leaving Zexathara staring at his reflection in the dark screen. Sir, his first officer said quietly, what are your orders? Zexathara thought about it. He had two choices. He could reject the human proposal and conquer Earth the traditional way. Add another reluctant world to the Confederation's growing list of rebellious members. Or he could do something that had never been done in 3,000 years of Confederation history. He could accept a species as an equal partner instead of a conquered subject. Contact the council, he said finally. Tell them I need an emergency session. 3 hours later, the images of 12 alien leaders appeared on Zexathara's screen. They represented the founding species of the Galactic Confederation, the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. "Admiral," spoke Council Leader Vaxton, a massive creature with tentacles instead of arms. "Your report was unusual. You claim to have found a species that wishes to join the Confederation voluntarily?" "That is correct, Council Leader." "And you believe this species could help resolve our current conflicts with resistant members?" "I believe they have demonstrated approaches that could be highly effective, yes." Another council member spoke up. "Admiral, in 3,000 years, no species has ever requested to join the Confederation. They have all required persuasion." "These humans are different," Zexathara said. "They have spent their entire history learning how to turn enemies into allies, how to resolve conflicts through cooperation instead of force." "Preposterous," snorted a third council member. "Such idealistic nonsense could never work on a galactic scale." "With respect," Zexathara replied, "our current approach isn't working either. Rebellion rates are at an all-time high. Military costs are increasing every year. Member satisfaction continues to decline." He pulled up the data the humans had provided. "The human model suggests we could reduce enforcement costs by 60% while increasing overall productivity and innovation." The council was quiet for a long moment. "You're suggesting we fundamentally change how the Confederation operates," Council Leader Vaxton said slowly. "I'm suggesting we try a pilot program. Allow Earth to join as a full partner. Let them demonstrate their conflict resolution techniques on our most difficult problems. If it works, we expand the program. If it doesn't, we return to traditional methods." "And if the humans are deceiving us? If this is some elaborate trap?" Zexathara thought about his time on Luna Station, the genuine warmth of the humans, their obvious excitement about meeting new species, their detailed proposals for improving Confederation efficiency. "Council Leader, they invited my entire war fleet to dinner. They offered to share their technology freely. They've provided detailed plans for resolving our internal conflicts. If this is a trap, it's the most elaborate and least profitable trap in galactic history." The council deliberated for 2 hours. When they finally reached a decision, Council Leader Vaxton's expression was unreadable. "Admiral Zexathara, the Council has decided to approve your recommendation. Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Confederation with full partnership status. They will be given 1 year to demonstrate the effectiveness of their collaborative approaches." Zexathara felt something he had never experienced in 47 conquests. Relief mixed with excitement. "However," Vaxton continued, "you will be personally responsible for this experiment. If the humans fail to deliver on their promises, if their methods prove ineffective, if this decision results in any negative consequences for the Confederation, you will be held accountable." "Understood, Council Leader." The transmission ended, leaving Zexathara alone with his thoughts. He had just made the biggest gamble of his career. Instead of conquering Earth, he had made them partners. Instead of adding another reluctant subject to the Confederation, he had invited humanity to help rebuild galactic civilization from the ground up. "Sir," his communications officer said, "Earth is requesting another communication. Put them through." This time, it wasn't just Commander Chen on the screen. It was a dozen humans from different departments, all smiling with genuine excitement. "Admiral," Chen said, "we just received confirmation of our membership approval. Thank you so much for supporting our application." "We're already putting together teams to work on the Andraxian situation," said Dr. Wright. "We've got some ideas that might surprise you." Another human spoke up. "Our engineering teams are excited to collaborate on fleet improvements. We've got some new engine designs that might interest you." And our cultural specialists are preparing integration protocols for future members, added a third. We think you'll find our approach much more effective than traditional conquest methods. Chen leaned forward. Admiral, we know you took a big risk supporting us. We won't let you down. The transmission ended with all 12 humans waving goodbye. Zexathera sat back in his command chair and looked out at Earth, the small blue planet that had somehow turned his conquest into a partnership. The world full of creatures who had greeted his war fleet with cookies and coffee. For the first time in his military career, he found himself genuinely excited about the future, because for the first time in 3,000 years, the Galactic Confederation was about to discover what it felt like to have members who actually wanted to be there. And Admiral Zexathara had the distinct feeling that the galaxy would never be the same. On the bridge's main display, Earth continued its steady rotation, blue and green and utterly unintimidated. And if Zexathara didn't know better, he would have sworn the whole planet was grinning. The humans had done it again. They had taken an impossible situation and somehow made everyone better off, even their conquerors.